We're in Ecclesiastes 12, verse 9, and Solomon is what we call winding down. Okay, he's getting to the end of this particular letter, and he doesn't have very many more verses, and he's still got a lot to say. And I find it interesting that the focus that he turns to is himself. Okay, for about 3 or 4 verses, he turns the attention back to himself. Remember, he said in verse 1 that he is the preacher, didn't he? The preacher. And he's going to turn back to that thought in these next few verses. And notice what he says beginning in verse 9. And moreover, because the preacher was wise, he taught the people knowledge. Yea, he gave good heed and sought out and set in order many proverbs. Somebody read Ecclesiastes 12:8. Wow. Moreover, well, he had just said that if you and I live this life with no concept of God, no concept of a soul, no concept of the hereafter, no real concept of good and evil, then guess what? Life is just one big vanity, isn't it? It's empty, it's useless, it's wasted, it means absolutely nothing. And yet, even with that thought in mind, he says, moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught the people knowledge. Man. Just because we have individuals out there who are living their lives as if there is no God, and just because there are people out there who don't believe there's a God, and just because we have individuals out there whose lives are a waste, doesn't mean that you and I don't need to keep trying. You know it? Even though there were many out there who live that way, Solomon says, I, as the preacher, am wise. And guess what? I'm going to keep teaching the people knowledge. Notice B1 there. Divine knowledge is an essential for all men, isn't it? Anybody know who Hannah is? Who is Hannah? Okay, the wife of who? Elkanah, the wife of Elkanah. She is the mother of Samuel, but she got that boy through a miracle, did she not? Okay. She prayed and she prayed fervently unto God to give her a son. But the reason we make mention of her is because in her prayers, one of the things that she said was this: for the Lord is a God of knowledge. 1 Samuel 2, verse 3. God is a God of knowledge, folks. Solomon tells us the Lord giveth wisdom. Out of His mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. Proverbs 2, verse 6. And in the book of Proverbs, the wise man exhorts us to acquire knowledge several times. Notice Proverbs 22:17. Bow down thine ear, hear the words of the wise. Apply thine heart unto my what? Knowledge. I wonder if I ask this question, how many would raise their hands? How many of you believe that you are knowledgeable of God's Word? I mean knowledgeable of God's Word. See, that's a... No, I said I don't want you to, because I don't want you to lie, and nor do I want you to be embarrassed for not raising. Chateau's down here going.
Well, if you look at the doctrinal thing to fill out,
The doctrinal questionnaire?
Yes.
Yes.
if you do that, and
It'd be interesting to pass that out to everybody and let everybody fill it out, wouldn't it? And then you might know how little you do know about, because it's simple questions, but some of the questions can really cause us some problems. Hey, who? Yes, sir.
I would look at it as being a student of the Bible, because it's a ticket to learn about God's Word for the rest of your life. We'll read something one day, and we'll go back and maybe a year later and read the same verse and get something out of it that we didn't get.
Well, there's no doubt that we will never acquire all the knowledge that we need. But let me ask you this. Do you think we as a church are more ignorant of God's Word today than we were, say, 70 years ago? Now listen to that. Okay? I hear a lot of uh-huhs. Yep, sure is. Okay? Now, see, that's the point that I'm making. We may look at ourselves as being, oh, I'm so smart. I know the Word of God. And guess what? Some of them old farmers and some of them old country folks way back yonder, they knew a whole lot more Bible than the church knows today. They probably forgot more Bible than some people know today. Okay? They studied, didn't they? I mean, they were students of the book. They didn't have TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and all this stuff, did they? They were focused on the Word of God, and we are a little bit more ignorant than we used to be. Solomon exhorts us to study God's Word. Cease, my son, to hear instruction that causeth to err from the words of knowledge. And folks, there's a lot of stuff out there that causes us to err from the truth, doesn't it? He says, cease from those things. The things that are not important, the things that don't add value to your life, the things that are meaningless and empty, we need to put those things aside and we need to focus more on the things that are of vital importance, the wisdom of the Almighty God. Notice the reason the preacher continued to teach the people is because he was wise. Wise. Let me ask you this. Do you think there are some people who believe preaching is foolish? Yeah. In fact, Paul, in writing in 1 Corinthians, said this, for the preaching of the cross is to them that perish foolishness. Isn't that amazing? You know, there's some people out there who thinks everything that we do, everything that we believe, all the stuff that means so much to us is just total, sheer foolishness, don't they? And yet, guess what we have to keep doing? We keep preaching and we keep teaching. Why? Because we are wise. That's why. What men might think to be foolish, God deems as wise, does He not? It is wise because some will hear and will accept the message, won't they? It is wise because they will be adequately warned by the wisdom of God. Folks, whether individuals accept or whether they don't accept our message, it's still wise to preach it, isn't it? It's wise from those two standpoints. People who have honest and good hearts will hear and obey. And they'll do what God wants to do. That's wise to go out and find those people, is it not? But it's also wise because we don't want anybody lost standing before God who has not been adequately warned. Right? Well, I just couldn't know the truth. Oh, yes, you could. OceanSide sent house to house to your house 25 times, and you didn't pick it up ever and read it. And when you did, you picked it up and you laughed at it and threw it away. For the last 5 years, they've been sending you Life Matters, and you hadn't turned and read a bit of it.
too much is given, much is required.
Yep, absolutely. We are watchmen, are we not? And our only responsibility, folks, is to sow the seed. That's the only responsibility we have, okay, is to sow the seed, to tell people. And then it's up to people to do what? To accept it or to reject it. You know, I can't force you to do anything. I can encourage you. I can exhort you, I can reprimand you, I can rebuke you, but it is all up to you to do it. But the one who does those things is wise, the Bible says. Now notice, he doesn't say you'll be loved. He doesn't necessarily say you're going to be accepted when you do that, but you are what? You are definitely wise. Look at point C. Solomon sets forth 3 principles of Bible study in this verse, folks, and I find it interesting. He still taught the people knowledge. Yea, he gave good heed. First thing you have to do to study God's Word is what? You got to read it, don't you? Somehow you have to hear it. Isn't that true? That's what heed means. I have to hear it. I can hear it by means of a tape. I can hear it by reading the Word of God myself. Somehow that message has to get from the page into my mind, doesn't it? But notice the second point. And sought out. I didn't just give heed to it. I what? I sought it out. Sometimes there are passages of Scripture that are difficult to understand, aren't they? Or maybe they're not that difficult to understand, but for some reason or another, we just don't quite get it, do we? Everybody else understands it fine, and all of a sudden we're struggling with that particular verse, and we just don't really understand what's there. Well, guess what you have to do? You got to seek out the meaning of the text. What happens to many people is they give up, right? Notice what he says again. And he gave good heed and gave up because he didn't understand. No, don't do that. Seek out. That's what I try to tell my How to Study the Bible class, right? Guys, I'm giving you tools, I'm giving you ways, I'm giving you things that you can do in order to do what? Ascertain the meaning of that verse. It's vital important, isn't it? And then lastly, and set in order. That's where we are in our How to Study the Bible class right now. We've got one more class next Thursday. And that's what I tell them this all the time. I said, look guys, you got to read the text. You got to seek out what's in there by looking at the definitions, looking for lessons, looking for the outline of the text. And then you have to do what? You have to set it in order. Okay? You have to set it in order. And I say you have to set it in order to do 2 things. Number 1, you set it in order so you understand it. Right? I've been trying to do some study on socialism. Okay? And it's sad. I think I've got 20 books in my library now on socialism. Okay? That's stupidity. Okay? Because now I got too much to read. But the problem with it is this. The problem is the amount of information is so vast. And I have yet to find just a simple book that just breaks it down, real, what do they call it? Socialism 101 or something? I've got a book that's it. I got a book that says Socialism 101. It's one of the hardest books I got. I thought, are you kidding me? This can't be that hard. My problem is I'm reading it, I'm searching it out. Third point I got to do is what? Set it in order. I've got to find a way that I can set each part of this particular system in order in my mind, because first thing I need to do is what? Understand it. Folks, if I don't understand it, I shouldn't be teaching it. You know what? If I don't understand it, I have no right to stand before others and say a word about it. Now I say that and we all do it, don't we? We act like we understand the whole world, don't we? We're authorities on everything. And most of us haven't studied doodly squat hardly. But after I have set it in order and I understand it, I also have to set it in order in a way for what? Everybody else to understand it. Okay? It may do me good, but I don't want it just to do me good. I want what? I want others to be benefited by it. Okay? I thank God that God blessed me with a mind that desires rationality and order. Okay? When you hear me say point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, that ain't for you. It's the only way Vic gets it. Okay? But hopefully, if I get it and I present it well, then you can what? Get it. Okay? So you have to set it in order. Hey.
This is why we have question and answer night.
This is true. This is true. To seek out more knowledge, absolutely. Now notice what he says. He set in order many whats? Many proverbs. Many proverbs. Listen to 1 Kings 4, 30 through 33. And Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the children of the east country, and all the wisdom of Egypt. For he was wiser than all men, than Ethan the Ezrahite, than Heman and Calcol and Darda, the sons of Mahal. His fame was in all nations round about. And he spake 3,000 proverbs. Man. And his songs were what? 1,005. His songs, we could call those psalms. Psalms. How many psalms of Solomon do we have? Oh, I figured you'd say at least one. There's a whole book that's called what? Song of Solomon, isn't there? But as far as the book of Psalms, there's only one that's attributed to him. But he wrote how many? 1,005. He wrote 3,000 proverbs, and guess what? We don't have them all. Well, I'd love to have them, wouldn't you? Now here's what's interesting. He spake of trees, from the cedar tree that is in Lebanon, even to the hyssop that springeth out of the wall. He spake also of beasts, and of fowl, and of creeping thing, and of fishes. What does the text say? Solomon was the wisest man in all the earth. Now here's what I wish I could do. I wish I had enough wisdom to look at the cedar tree and understand the wisdom that Solomon saw in it. I wish I had the wisdom to look at the hyssop and understand the wisdom Solomon saw in it. He said, I see wisdom in what? In beasts, in fowl, in birds. Isn't that amazing? I wish I had those 3,000 proverbs. Because it would be wonderful to be able to think more like who? Like Solomon, wouldn't it? Who created this world? God did. And guys, I've said this before. God instilled this world with all of His wisdom. Okay? The world, in fact, the entirety of the universe is built on the wisdom of God. And if you and I will study it, research it, think about it, ponder it enough, guess what? There's not a thing in this world that can't teach us something. You know that? The problem is, you and I just aren't focused enough, or maybe we don't desire it enough to do it. You know it? Because there isn't a thing in this world that can't teach us something. You know it? Rodney?
One of the most amazing things that I've seen created from a bird, airplanes.
Oh, yeah. Unbelievable, isn't it? You know? For those guys to watch those birds fly and say, you know what? I think we could be able to do that one of these days. You know?
Had to study the bird
Oh, I know.
because it takes the shape of an airport
Yeah.
to be able to sustain an airplane in flight.
But you see, somebody had to look at them long enough to think, you know, I think I could do that. You know, people would think you're stupid. Right? You'll never fly like that bird. You know? Oh, yes. Yes, in fact, I can fly faster than birds. I'll have birds flying through my motors. I'll be flying so fast. Okay? But see, that's what I'm talking about. The things that are out there that God has created have wisdom in them if we, as humanity, can find it. Okay, and we have to have individuals that are willing to study and do those things, and we might be surprised at how many things have been studied and learned from. How?
Something about knowledge. Is there a sliding scale or something that shows us where on the chart we would be, you know, from the ignorant to the being the lower to God being the higher? Where would we fall on that scale somewhere?
No, there's no scale of that. Okay, because every person is different, isn't it? I mean, there is no test, there is no anything God's ever given us. All God wants us doing is what? Growing in our knowledge. Folks, if you're not smarter today than you were a year ago in your Christian knowledge, you got problems. And God will hold us accountable for that. You know that? It's just as bad as committing any other sin against God, not to grow in knowledge. And but as long as we are growing in our knowledge, then we are doing what God desires for us to do. And it just takes time and effort to do that. And there's some people who can do it faster than others, right? There's some people who will give more time to it than others. Some can give an hour, some will give 2 hours. Some people will be taught a few tricks as to how to increase their knowledge quickly. Okay? What you laughing at? Yeah, she knows because I told them in my Bible, how to study the Bible class. Here's a little trick. If you want to be 2 times, 10 times smarter than anybody in the church, you do this. Now, it's going to take them a year to do it. But 1 year from now, if they do it, you and I are going to be looking at that person and go, "Ooh, boy, that dude's sharp." Okay? Because there's things we can do, folks, to increase our knowledge quickly if we'll do them and if we know how to do them. Okay? Have you ever seen somebody that knows how to do something and he teaches you how to do it and you go, "I can't believe it's that easy." And all of a sudden you're smart, aren't you? But you're struggling like crazy. Something that's taking you 2 or 3 hours, man, 10 minutes, boom, got it. You go, "Wow, unbelievable." All it takes is somebody helping us, doesn't it, sometimes? But just good stuff, good stuff. Ecclesiastes 12:10. The preacher sought to find out acceptable words, and that which was written was upright, even words of truth. Solomon notes some of the responsibilities of the preacher, doesn't he? Isn't that what he says? First, he seeks to find out acceptable words as he presents God's Word to others. Acceptable words. Anybody look that little word up to see what it means? When you think of acceptable words, what immediately comes to your mind? Acceptable words. Easy to understand, okay? Words that are known, words that are common. Okay? Acceptable words. See, usually acceptable now falls on the hearer, right? Words that I believe the hearer will what? Will accept. Okay? Is that hard sometime to do? Oh man. The definition of the word acceptable. You ready for this? pleasure, delight, a thing to be desired. Now that's the definition of the Hebrew word. Okay, acceptable words. Words that will be what? Desired by the audience. Clark says the most suitable words. Those which the people could best understand. Turn over to Galatians chapter 1. Galatians chapter 1. Paul's writing about the revelation that he's received. Let's start at verse 9 of Galatians 1. As we said before, so say I now again. If any man preach any other gospel unto you than that ye have received, let him be accursed. Now listen to what he says. For do I now persuade men or God? Or do I seek to please men? For if I yet pleased men, I should not be the servant of Christ. But I certify you, brethren, that the gospel which was preached of me is not after man. For I neither received it of man, neither was I taught it, but by the revelation of Jesus Christ. Does Paul sound like he was trying to be pleasing to man? Now we got a Bible contradiction, don't we? Paul says, I'm not trying to preach in order to please men. Solomon says that the preacher should seek out acceptable words, words that should what? Be desirable to men.
Desirable, not pleasing. And that's the difference. Desire, I want this. I want this. I've been looking for this. Don't make me happy. Prove to me what I've been searching is what you want to give me.
Okay? Good explanation. Anybody else?
Did he mean acceptable to men or did he mean acceptable to God?
Acceptable to men or acceptable words, right?
Acceptable to God.
Now, sometimes in this context, so far we've only looked at the first responsibility. Haven't looked at the second one. And folks, the second one oftentimes will do what? Modify the first one. Hal, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say words that I can spell. If I have to get a dictionary to figure out what that word means, it's not appropriate. If I can just see it, I know what that word is.
Okay, very good. Guys, it is not easy for a preacher of the gospel, whoever he is, I don't care who he is, even in a smaller audience like this, to always preach acceptable words. Want to know why? We have old folks and we have young folks, don't we? We have well-educated individuals, and then in some audiences we may have some individuals not as well-educated. We have singles and we have marrieds, don't we? We have faithful and we have unfaithful. We have individuals who are Christians, individuals who think they're Christians, and individuals who aren't Christians. Right? And here's a man got to stand up before you for 30 to 40 minutes and preach to you acceptable words, and all of you walk out going, ooh, that was good. That's almost an impossibility. Okay? I think what it means is this: suitable words for the subject matter at hand. Okay? Suitable words for the subject matter at hand. If I were teaching a college class of PhD Bible students, might I present a subject to them differently than I would just to a normal congregation? Sure. You see? Words that I could use there would be suitable, whereas words I would use here would not be suitable. Would they? It wouldn't be acceptable. Because you wouldn't what? Get it? You wouldn't understand it. Okay? I need to preach on them in a way that individuals understand the message that's being presented. But notice this next one. And that which was written was what? Upright. Comma. Even words of truth. I looked up that little definition of upright. Strong says it means this, and I love this, straight. You ever heard somebody say this? I'm just being straight with you. What does he mean? I'm just being honest. I'm just telling you the truth. And that's where that thought comes from. That's what truth means. That which is straight. Okay? Brown, Driver, and Briggs defines it as straightness, uprightness, that which is right. Now see, this is where that which is right modifies that which is pleasant, right? Because sometimes that which is right isn't pleasant to the audience, is it? If you don't believe that, go home today and read Acts 7. Do you think Stephen preached words that were appropriate, acceptable, suitable as far as the audience was concerned? Yeah. They were acceptable, but they were also what? Truthful, and because they were truthful, the audience responded and stoned him to death, didn't they? The problem there wasn't on Stephen, the problem was on who? On the audience that day. John 3:20 and 21. For everyone that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. But he that doeth truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be manifest, that they are wrought in God. There are sometimes individuals, it doesn't matter how nicely you preach it, how lovingly you preach it, how kindly you preach it, if you preach truth, they're going to what? They're going to despise it. It has nothing to do with the manner in which it was presented. It has everything to do with the heart of the individual that's receiving it. Okay? If you do evil, you hate the what? You hate the light.
The way they want it. We had a president that read the Bible and turned it into an abridged Bible. He ripped out pages that didn't suit him. He made a Bible that was pleasing to him, but not pleasing to God and not true. And we tend to do that too. There are people that shop churches to find what makes them feel good instead of what makes them feel the need to do what God wants.
Well, and each of us, and we have to be careful, because each of us have a tendency to do that for our lives.
Yes.
You know? We find the excuse, we find the reason, we find the justification, and we carve that little section out, and okay, here's where it fits, when really it doesn't fit in at all like that. Okay? So we do have to be very careful about doing that. Put a lesson down there in your notes. A minister is not seeking to please his audience. He is seeking to present them precisely what God has authorized. That's what we seek to preach, isn't it? He presents the message clearly. He presents the message kindly. He presents the message boldly. He presents the message truthfully. Paul said, but speaking the truth in love. Folks, as long as there is love in that man's heart for the audience to whom he is preaching, and he preaches in a manner that they ought to be able to understand, guess what? If it's the truth, the burden now falls upon the audience, doesn't it? Jeannie? Oh, yes. Oh, we got a bunch of examples. You know, John the Baptist You know, Jesus. There was an occasion, and you could go back and study. I think it's in Luke. I want to say Luke 4. The Bible says, and he spoke unto them gracious words. Okay? Words of what? Words of grace. Okay? And guys, anything that's preached out of the New Testament, if it's the truth, guess what it is? It's the grace of God. Isn't it? It's the grace of God. Who had their hand up? Somebody? Beverly?
I was just thinking about something you said 30 or 40 years ago in the Lord's church. We were having a study on marriage, divorce, remarriage, and it was all the truth. It was all good. And one deacon or elder, I can't remember what he was, he just stood up and said, well, if that's the truth, just rip that part out of the Bible. And you can go on with everything else and believe it, but if that's the truth, just take that word out of the Bible.
Oh, yes.
He wanted to accept the unseen or the word that wasn't true.
There's been more than once people have taken penknives to the Bible and have cut out what they didn't like. That's for certain. And that's easy to do, isn't it? Guys, I want you to look. We're going to finish this text, I promise you, next time. It's going to be tough. We're going to have to fly through these next 3 or 4 verses. But listen to this next verse. We're not going to study it. But listen to what he says. The words of the wise are as goads. Boy. Somebody tell me what a goad is.
Poker.
It's a poker.
It's to get the ox moving again when it stopped. And what we have today, we have little sparks on it.
Sparks. Electric. You shock them. I don't know whether I want to be poked or shocked. Okay? And guys, guess what? Those little pokers were sharp. Okay? And occasionally, when they poked, guess what would happen? Draw a little blood. You know that? Draw a little blood. Now, wait a minute. I thought the preacher was supposed to speak pleasant words. Well, his words are also got to be like a what? Like a goad. We'll talk about that more next week.